Hey everybody, I've got a super fun quilting tutorial for you today using a very simple quilt block I will walk you through. Better than that, we are using beautiful Tula Pink fabrics. Are you ready? Let's get started. Well, welcome back everybody to So Well. I am your host, Rob Appell from Stitchin Heaven in Quitman, Texas, and I'm actually today in Quitman, Texas, having some real fun here on the set, getting ready for some really exciting things to come your way. But I wanted to offer all of you a really fun, easy quilting tutorial to kind of get our sewing juices flowing in this new portion of the new year. So we're gonna do the Moon Garden fabrics from Tula Pink, but we are doing the Meadowland quilt, and this is from Then Came June Designs. That's the pattern company, but the quilt pattern itself was designed by Megan Buchanan, and we always like to give credit where credit is due. This is a really cool quilt. Now, I cut my fabrics from fat quarters. You can also do it from the yardage, and the pattern is very well written and tells you everything you need to know as you go along the way. But if you look at the quilt behind me, you can see that other than our background fabric, the solid, all of the units are kind of mixed and matched. So you're gonna cut the same pieces from all of the fabrics, right? And because I do want to protect and or encourage all of you to pick up the Then Came June pattern, the Meadowland, excuse me, I'm obviously caffeinated, the Meadowland quilt, a mouthful, right? So at any rate, I'm just gonna refer to our parts and pieces today by names instead of sizes. So we're gonna have a very big square, and I'm cutting this from the theme fabric. And those of you who are fans of Tula Pink fabric, you know she pays incredible attention to detail. So even in the blocks in the quilt, and this is one of the ones I wanna recreate, anything that's got a character is basically been positioned right side up. So let's look at this a little bit deeper today and talk about ways that we can put directional prints into our quilt blocks, even if they're kind of randomly put together like this. So colors are random, but the position, there's a lot of attention to detail like my friend Tula does with her fabric. So anyways, we have big squares, we have medium-sized squares, we have a little bit smaller than medium-sized squares, we've got itsy-bitsy squares, and we've got rectangles. And we're gonna get them all together for you right now. Again, I just wanted to show you the fabrics that I chose as I ran through the shop yesterday grabbing stuff off the bolt. It was super fun to get ready to recreate this. Fabrics out of the way. Here is what a unit or a block actually looks like. Let me lay that down so that you can see. And again, as I rotate it around, look at how I've taken the time to position anything with an eye looking at me right side up, and that's the detail I was referring to. So here is our background fabrics. We're going to use 3 different prints, a big print and a couple of medium or small prints. Get my iron rocking and rolling here because we're going to need that in a second, and let's dive right in. Okay, so the first thing we do really need to do is we're going to make what they call the magic flying geese units. The flying geese units are these right here, a rectangle with 2 squares or half square triangles added on. We're going to do them a really cool way. If you haven't seen this before, let's make sure we go right sides together. Don't ask me why I'm reminding you of that right now. So I'm going to take my biggest square, and on my medium biggest squares, I've already marked on the back side with just a pencil and a ruler the diagonal line, and that's just going to flow through there. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm lining up now 2 of these squares, one on this upper corner, one on the opposite lower corner. And I'm going to take, I know you don't see me use these straight pins very often, but just for security, if you've never done this before, run a straight pin to hold your first square in place, overlapping this section right here. And then we're gonna run another straight pin just to hold this second square in place as we get over to the sewing machine. This drawn line is going to be a edge marking line. We're not sewing on it. We're going to do a 1/4 inch on both sides. So come in where it's close and handy for you on your sewing machine, and go ahead and drop your presser foot and begin stitching that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then of course, as you approach the pin, take it out. Don't ever sew thinking that your needle will miss it. And then as I approach where the 2 squares with the drawn lines line up, I'm just making sure everything's nice and smooth there, okay? And now we're going to approach onto that next square, stitching that through, and once that's secured, Again, I can remove the pin. Real easy sewing today, folks. And all the way through like that. I'm just going to cut my threads real quick so that I can rotate my unit. Fortunately, this wonderful machine is going to lift its foot for me. So now I'm on the other side and I don't have to worry about the pins because they're appropriately been removed. I'm just going to rip through this, or I should say stitch through this. Okay, super easy, right? Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to lay it on my Efficient Susan mat, my Martelli mat, and you're going to need a ruler that is larger than your squares because we're going to go ahead and cut a diagonal now as I go across here. So I'm just basically cutting that penciled line that was put there first. Oh, and did you see that, right? The new Kaffe colored rotary cutter. I thought that was pretty cool, so I grabbed myself one of those to try out. I like the way it feels in the hand, and most important for me, it's got the spring so I don't leave it open and get scolded by all of you. And that's not what we want to talk about in the comments today. You know what I really want to hear from all of you is those of you who are fans of Tula Pink fabrics. I would love to know what your favorite collection or her favorite fabric line that she's done, or your favorite fabric line that she's done has been so far. So load up those comments below, folks, and make sure you hit the like button while you're there. But let me know what your favorite Tula Pink fabrics have been as we finish out putting this wonderful patchwork together. Okay, so now for both of these sides that I've divided them up, we're going to come on over to the ironing board and we're just going to press up into these small little prints here. Okay, so I'm just going to push up into the triangles. Okay, so now once we've pressed our little triangles up, it kind of looks like a raccoon or a little trash panda. I'm not trying to influence anybody's decision on that comment section below question, but yes, we are going to make both of our units look just like that, right? Easy. And then we're going to take our next series of squares, and remember, we're going prints together or right sides together. And when we line up this next square here, please make sure that your diagonal line that you've drawn on there is now running in the diagonal, because we're going to do the same thing on this. We're going to go ahead and sew 1/4 inch on both sides of our drawn line. You could technically chain piece these one side at a time, but I just like to handle one unit at a time myself on this kind of construction, but really you can do it either way. And now that I have both of those new squares stitched on, we're basically going to cut them the way we did before, using a ruler really just to protect our hand, where you're cutting down that pencil line, that drawn line there. Okay, and you can toss them on your wonderful wool mat. We're going to press those over here in just a second. The pattern instructions tell you what size to trim these to for accuracy. If you're just kind of following along with guesswork, go ahead and just make sure you at least remove the dog ears on all of those parts and pieces. Real simple, right? Sometimes I forget that I have the efficiency of the Martelli mat. I like the way it cuts because of the density of the mat itself. I've always been a believer in a dense mat and a sharp blade, but I sometimes forget to swing the mat, right? Because I can now. Anyways, so get those all trimmed up, and we're going to move on to our next series of units, right? We're actually going to build now, working off of our center background fabric, we're going to build in these rectangles and mini squares. So that's really, really simple. You should have 5 of these background squares cut. They're all the same size. Okay, so for now, the simplest way to do this, if you're looking at orientation of pattern or print, is go ahead and just line them up. I'm kind of looking, this is center, this is top. So if there was any direction, I would be facing upward at the moment. Then I'm just going to fold this over, and I'm going to head on over and introduce it to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that ought to hold it forever. Again, if you were chain piecing, you would do all of them at once, but you're going to want to then do your layout on a design wall to make sure that any of your directional fabrics are heading in the correct direction. If you just randomly start doing this, you might find up that your fun little critters and characters are heading in areas you don't want them to be. Once those rectangles are added to the squares, I'm going to go ahead and press into the green fabric or my rectangle fabric right now. And I'm just kind of thinking ahead for nesting my seams that way. Okay, so I've got this unit built here. Now this is where we want to pay attention. If I had the direction, like even in these little owl eye faces and heads here, even though they were split, I made sure they were all facing upright. So then what we're going to go ahead and do is just take a moment and build in our cornerstones. Right, I really want that cool little plume heading up, and maybe this branch. See, and even my owl part is correct there. And so now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to insert these, but we've already established our direction of our fabric. So I'm going to also handle these one at a time. Bringing it back on over to the board after I stitch to just make sure. And of course, there's a lot of tricks and techniques that you will establish after years of quilt making that are your personal rhythms for getting things on and off of the design wall with the right accuracy and all this. But this is a real fun beginning project, so we might as well address it as if we're all beginners anyways. You never know what you're going to learn while making a simple project. Okay, I can now at least get this one over to the machine without cutting too much thread, and that's one of the reasons we like to chain piece. It's good and secure, you save a little thread that way, kind of keep your rhythm going. I'll also use the thread cutter on my machine to separate my parts and pieces. Now that one was up there. You have to pay attention, right? That comes around here, easy peasy. Perfect. And now as I come on over to the ironing surface, my wool mat, I'm going to again press into the green. So from my small squares into my rectangle this time. Small squares into the rectangle. And at the moment I am praying that I said that right so that our seams nest. Let's see how we did, folks. Oh, good. They will. Nesting means your seams kind of go opposite directions, which helps align our patchwork. So at any rate, now we're just going to make sure, once again, we have our orientations correct as we go ahead and we build in the center unit, right? This is the center unit now, and it just happens to be that these squares and these triangles are made from the same fabric, and that's what gives such a neat effect here in the geometry of the patchwork. So let's get these put on. Again, you can flip them over. I like to kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but wiggle those seams together right as I get to the machine, and go ahead and drop that foot on. Stitch in across, and then I'll come over and I'll line up the next nested seams. Let the machine do the rest of the work really for me. Line up the corner at this point. And now that I have both sides on, I'm just going to head back on over to the pressing station. And at this point, I'm just going to kind of press from the center out. It just seems to be easier. See what I did there? Seems to be easier. I entertain myself a little too much over here on this side of the camera. I hope I'm entertaining all of you as well. And again, if you love these videos, please make sure you hit the like button, comment, share them with your friends. It really helps us grow the channel, and we're having so much fun here doing that. So anyways, back on task. We have this now in orientation, and I'm just going to take a moment and slide this on out of my way so we can build the rest of the block. We're not going to need any more cutting or trimming at this point. So I'm going to first focus on using my print fabrics, establishing where I want those to go based on any kind of character that may be in there, any kind of print that may need to stay upright. That's the feet of the owl, so let's keep it there. And of course I practiced in this block, right, so that you could see at home and I could really explain it a little bit more easily. Okay? Now our backgrounds, if you're following the requirements of the patterns, are solids. So these can just drop in, they're squares, and those are also going to be referred to as cornerstones if you're learning with me today. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and build these in technically rows. So I'm going to go ahead and join these two here. As both of these sides are on, I'm going to press those outward as well. And a lot of times I'm trying to press where the patchwork isn't. I just think it facilitates the fabric laying over smooth. This would be a really good time to double check the orientation of your fabric prints. Make sure everything is still heading in the direction you intended, because we don't want to take the seam ripper out in another few moments, right? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make sure, like I said, everything's cool. And now I'm going to take a moment and sew on these cornerstones so that I can build these rows together. Okay, real simple. And if you're using solids, like I said, there should not be a wrong answer at this point for adding these cornerstones. So you certainly can chain piece these. All right, quilting team, we are now to the point where we have the 4 cornerstones on. Let's knock these over with the iron. And again, to help the nesting of these, because I pressed from the inside out, let's go ahead and press from the outside in this time, pressing from our solids into the center pieces. Now this is when you want to make sure that your orientation is correct. Okay, and here we go again. As you can see, just making sure that our prints are now forming like a diamond shape around. Flop these over, match up those seams and 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you are literally in the home stretch. Don't rush it though. This is when I get sloppy, so just take your time, match up your seams. And as we cut those last threads, folks, this block is complete. So let me just press it real quick so I can show you the last step, which would be alignment of all of your blocks. And again, in that situation, you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping all of your blocks in the correct orientation. So I'm rotating these to make sure that my owl faces are both looking at me correctly. Now again, in the quilt you can see we didn't ever put the same blocks next to each other, and I don't know that we really ever created the same block twice because of the way that we cut all of the different parts and pieces from the beginning from the same fabric so that we could mix and match all of our design elements. What I wanted to show you is here is the section where your 2 solids are going to match up, and that's actually what forms this effect of a larger square and a smaller square. These are your background fabrics, and a lot of times we like to also mix backgrounds to keep things scrappy, but I think that might negatively affect this project. So I'm going to encourage you just to follow the wonderful instructions from Then Came June Pattern Designs. Megan Buchanan, again, thank you very, very much for allowing us to share this with everybody at home. This has been the Meadowland quilt pattern. I just think it's fantastic. Like I said, this was using the Moon Garden quilt fabric line from Tula Pink, and then when it was finished in the quilting, this was just done on a long arm with a pantograph, but some really kind of fun florally, swirly, and circular motifs that really brings in a lot of the elements that Tula will use in her fabric designs. So a lot of times if I'm looking, how will I free motion machine quilt this quilt, even though I did not quilt this quilt myself, I'll try to find some of the elements from the fabrics that I was so attracted to originally. That theme fabric that made me say, wow, I gotta make a quilt out of this stuff. So again, you know, there's a lot of floral and filigree, and so again, that's what's happened in the quilting, and it's just a really nice, easy way to bring all of the elements together. So thank you all for being here today with me. Hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. Remember to share it with your friends. Comment below on what has been your favorite Tula Pink fabric line to this date. You know me, and I really love those wonderful little trash pandas, the raccoons, of course. But again, not trying to influence anybody other than I want to tell you all, please stay well, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.